We want to be verbose because we think there's a lot to say. In the world is a complex place, and simplifying and losing the complexity does not make the complexity not happen. We have to explain the complexity and how it all fits together and how this industry works. You have to roll slow. We have a saying in the Air Current. We said, no story shall be published before its time.
Today on Mission Critical, I'm joined by Jon Ostrower, editor-in-chief of the Air Current. Jon and I both call Seattle home, and I first met him at the Aerospace event hosted by Joanna Speed's Aero Lambda Group. Since then, I've admired his ability to cut through noise in an industry often overloaded with headlines and hype. Jon's career spans the Wall Street Journal, CNN, and now the Air Current, where he's built one of the industry's most trusted sources of insight by going against the grain. Fewer press releases, more strategy, more context. His work has earned him a reputation as the industry's insider's insider, the person leaders turn to when they want clarity. In this conversation, we'll explore what it means to build authority in an era of AI-generated headlines, the strategic moves shaping aerospace today, and how storytelling, not just reporting, drives the industry forward. Welcome, Jon.
Catherine, thank you so much for having me.
I've been so excited to have you on. Ever since I met you, I've been following your work, and it is definitely not the AI-generated news we're used to seeing. You said the Air Current grew by watching what everyone else was doing and going the other direction. What was the core bet you made on the media model, and why do you think it worked?
God, what a great opening question. Okay, so going back to our birth in 2018, I had the benefit of having a lot of different perspectives across media. I was an independent blogger. I worked for a magazine. I worked for a newspaper. I worked for a TV network.
Not just any newspaper.
Fair enough. Yes, the Wall Street Journal was very incredible 4.5 years
it's
there.
The Wall Street Journal.
It was, yes. And I really learned how great journalism happens at scale. And I also got a chance to see how the media model is struggling. And, within that, I spent 18 months at CNN after the Journal, and I left the CNN, actually got laid off there, ended up being the best thing to ever happen to me in my career. And
getting fired was the best thing to ever happen to me.
Yeah, it's amazing because you want to be freed from all of your sort of like, it's like the Stockholm syndrome of mainstream media. It's like you're being held hostage by it and say, okay, now it's time to go off and do my own thing and test all of the assumptions. And a lot of the assumptions that I had was really watching media organizations grow too quickly without a clear direction and then come down hard on the other side. So there was this cycle of heavy investment followed by retrenchment and pain that ultimately people like myself were having to live with. I got laid off with 49 of my colleagues at CNN for no fault of our own. Yeah. And so within that, I was looking at, okay, so everyone is going in this direction. They're all chasing video and social media and trying to understand how you get the maximum number of eyeballs and SEO and all of that. And it's like, well, you're spending so much time for a sliver of someone's attention. What if you go in the opposite direction and change the economics around the model, which is to say something that we're going to invest our time in our readers. And we want them to invest back, both in terms of what they pay for a subscription, of course, but also, look, time is like the ultimate luxury good in 2025. Like your ability to sit and think and reflect on what's going on around you is really the thing that I think is most valuable at this point in our life when there's so much vying for our attention, like literally in our field of view at any given moment. And so saying that, like, no, the Air Current is going to take that luxury of time and it's going to fill it with something valuable. And we're going to say, we're going to slow you down and we're going to be a quiet place. Don't have ads. We don't have pop-ups. We don't have things that are going to interrupt you while you're reading, because fundamentally, you are not the product. The product is what we're creating for you. And that is a fundamentally different take on what the modern media model is, that relies on people's data and who they are for ultimately selling to third parties or generating ads. Something always has to pay for the news, but we think we've really cracked a model where the news pays for the news because we're delivering the type of value that our subscribers expect from us, which is that they want to understand and have insight into what's going on around them rather than just, you know, smart brevity. We want we want to be verbose because we think there's a lot to say. Not in the world is a complex place, and simplifying complexity and losing the complexity does not make the complexity not happen. We have to explain the complexity and how it all fits together in the larger, bigger picture of how this industry works.
So you went old school. We're not going to do pop-ups. We're not going to chase the SEO dream. In a world flooded with AI-generated content, how do you maintain that trust and authority with your audience?
You have to roll slow. Look, we have a saying in the Air Current. We said, "No story shall be published before its time." And what we mean by that is there have been
That's the opposite of Bay Area mantras.
You're right. We don't fix it later is not our view, right? We can't have that because we also understand that trust takes eons to build and you can lose it in an instant. And so from where we sit, like when you think about how AI is being used, particularly on the editorial side, not in terms of operations. I think AI actually has an important role to play from an operational perspective, whether it's speeding up various processes on the back end, correspondence, things of that nature. But fundamentally, Alon Head on our team, our phenomenal senior editor who covers eVTOL technologies and future advancements in this industry better than anybody. It's just extraordinary. She said to me recently, she was like, "Well, look, if we're looking at AI and how AI is used from an editorial perspective, AI isn't designed to get it right. AI is designed to get it, or at least sound right." And there's
sometimes it gets it very wrong.
And sometimes it gets it completely wrong also. It's the lack of safeguards for those hallucinations that make it an impossible tool to use for editorial purposes. So if you have a multi-hundred page document from the FAA that needs to be explained, using AI to summarize it loses nuance, it loses texture, it loses the things that make the thing you're trying to understand what it was. So you know what we do? We take the time and we read it. it's not
you
that
read a full article.
Yeah, right. But I think, but within that, I think what your core of your question is, if AI for editorial is not designed for accuracy. It's designed for sounding right and with prone to hallucination. And our goal is accuracy and getting it right. These two things can't work together. So you have to be really, really strategic, or more really tactical about how you apply these tools, because they can destroy you if you're not careful.
That makes sense. Where do you think most senior execs in our industry get their news?
So what we have observed for sort of the user behavior of our subscribers. So we have a product called TSC Pro, and one of the big features of TSC Pro is to have a glossy, formatted magazine style PDF delivered to your inbox. And it's delivered to your inbox for two reasons. Number one, it allows us to deliver it early to our pro subscribers who want that privilege to effectively use that information before it runs on the aircurrent.com. And that's incredibly valuable. And that time is valuable. But also, because we're sending off these PDFs, which are magazine style, they can be ported around, they can be read offline, and they can be effectively shared, from whoever is receiving them, sent up the line. And what we realized was that you don't want to have a situation where you're having news that's like, okay, so hey, here's a link to the article, and they click the link and say, "Oh, I have to log in. How do I log?" Like, they don't want to do that. They just want it delivered. And so,
Not another portal.
not another portal, right? Exactly. And I think that that was really instructive to us in terms of how executives think about information and what they and how they want it delivered to them. Yes, I think they want it delivered to them in sort of the Axios smart brevity format, and that's fair enough. That a lot of corporations are leaning into that. But I think when they really want to sit down and understand something and really want to dissect it, uh, they want it in a cohesive format that they can just go through start to finish without interruptions. And I think that information is or taking the time to get information, new information, is really, really hard to come by when you're operating at that level. And so to be able to say, no, this is what I'm focusing on right now, that's tremendously important.
Hmm. When I'm thinking back to undergrad, and it tells how old I am, when the college professors would always say the one best thing you could do for yourself in terms of a career is get a Wall Street Journal subscription, like the paper one, and read that every day. And there was this hour, I think that we talked about it before, where I'd come home from work even 7 years ago and pour a cup of tea and sit down, and it was this relaxation point. I think a lot of us had parents grow up with that, and it's gone. So you're saying, hey, we're kind of reintroducing that space.
Yeah. Well, I think that, like I said, time is a luxury good, right? And our attention is so scarce. It's funny you say that because when I was a cub reporter at the Journal, what they would say to us is that, like, okay, the thing you need to do every single day is you need to read the paper. Read the paper
Same
every day.
advice.
Right? Same advice, exact same advice.
Mhm.
And it was because you understood the flow of stories, you understood story selection, you understood how it all came together. And by the way, when you watch the super tanker of the Wall Street Journal be published 6 days a week, that is one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. And somehow it came together seamlessly. And the iterative nature of the editorial process is just is really a modern marvel that hasn't changed that much. I mean, it's newspapers are still large super tankers that, they, whether it was being published in 1975 or 1955 or whatever, here we are in 2025, the process, aided by technology, of course, and computers. But fundamentally, it's the news gathering process that comes together and delivers the day's news in a format that people can really slow down with. And I think one of the things that we are absolutely going to see in the future is that as more of social media, more of digital media is overrun with artificial content and more bite-sized content vying for that split second of your attention, that the demand for a quiet place is only going to grow, because I think people need that for themselves. And I think it's like, it's a lot of the reason why events came screaming back after COVID, because we like being. I think people like being around people. I think human connection, right? But it's also that sort of offline sort of glue that holds us together, and a lot of that glue is also the recovery time that we have to just sit and think, and it's so scarce. And when we both got young families, and that sort of frenetic nature of
And now I have a young family and a puppy.
exactly just to make it, just to add a new level of complexity on it. It's like
Mhm.
it's like level 9 chaos, yeah. But that's it, right? It's like, but it's this, there's so much chaos going on around us at any given moment that you want a place where it's just not here. And I think that, and I don't say that's exclusive to the air current. I think it's going to be exclusive to, like, people really wanting, like, dumb phones without cameras and without TikTok and without social media. And they just want to be able to make a phone call, and something like, going back to, when we were both in college, when you had a simple cell phone, and it didn't have all the bells and whistles, and you just sort of, I think that we're heading in that direction.
A backlash, if you will. Okay, let's track industry trends. If you look across aerospace today, commercial, defense, mobility, What's one strategic trend you think leaders are underestimating?
Underestimating. Oh, wow. I think the industry doesn't appreciate its own maturity.
Tell me more.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that is going to be happening in that we're already seeing, but I think the realizations are going to be setting in is just how scarce growth actually is becoming. And how do you grow either at a steady or consistent rate relative to what's actually available in the environment that you're playing in? And typically, companies that get in trouble are the ones that try to grow too quickly when the growth isn't there to match, or you've not executed properly or not prepared for it properly. And I think that, we see this particularly amongst, US airlines. And this is something that I've been thinking about for a while, is that, Scott Kirby at United Airlines calls it cost convergence. And what he's saying is that the minimum cost to play in air transport in the United States is coming up. And I was looking at recent data on the cost of enplanements at airports, fundamentally a function of uh, you know infrastructure spending, and the cost of enplanements at various airports is skyrocketing. And what that means fundamentally is that the cost to access the system is growing, and that a whole, you know, 25%, 30%, third of the market that was able to access air transport through low cost carriers might not be able to because of just the overall cost of
Getting priced
accessing,
out.
right? Exactly. And so where the industry finds growth, the turboprop market is about 80% replacement. And I think that's kind of what the future begins to look like down the line from a maturity perspective. But you look at air transport broadly, the large jet market, it's about 50% replacement, and in the U.S. it's an even higher level at
Oh, we've
that
seen
rate.
MRO be a gold mine.
Oh, exactly, right? Because the airplanes are staying in service longer, because obviously the pipeline of new airplanes is more challenging to move into production. Not to mention the MRO issues around what it costs to take care of an engine. I mean, these are all the rising costs that airlines and those in the ecosystem are seeing. So that filters through sort of the scarcity of growth. Okay, so why then are airlines moving toward premium? Well, when you have a sweet deal with a credit card company, yeah, you need to create a more premium experience to get people hooked into the ecosystem and so on and so forth. So you see them sort of balancing out the loss of revenue at the bottom end toward this new sort of more scarce growth at the top end. I mean, US airlines are like 1.6, 1.7% CAGR over the next 20 years. It's pretty low, but I think that's an important bellwether for the rest of the industry, as far as how we think about various parts. I mean, in defense, I think it's different. I think geopolitics will be driving a lot of growth, particularly relative to the U.S. posture towards China and Russia, and what that means over the next 5 to 10 years. That said, on the commercial side, I think that how that changes relative to tariffs, rather relative to geopolitics, relative to rising costs, relative to other parts of the industry globally that are going to be just more mature, whether it's in Asia or the Middle East, where that growth comes from and who can actually access the system. I think it becomes a really interesting question. I think that preparing for a world of scarce growth is really going to be what the future of this industry looks like.
It sounds like you're a little more bullish on defense.
Oh, well, just from reading the news, right? I mean, look, you look at what's going on in Ukraine with drones and how that is so massively transformed the state of the world and the state of what warfare is here in 2025. We had a fantastic report again from my colleague Alon, who went to Kyiv earlier in the year and met with all the many drone companies there, to understand sort of their technology and sort of how it fit in the larger strategy. But again, you see the nature of you've got like F-47 on the top end, and you've got $1,000 drone on the bottom end, and it's like it's everything in
I
between,
talked to a
right?
CEO that was expanding in the U.S. and a $2,000 UAV. It didn't look like much, but yeah, it had the ultimate test ground as well. So yeah, we're seeing that growth across the recruitment side too in terms of UAV.
Oh, interesting.
What's the biggest strategic win you've seen in aerospace over the last couple of years?
Oh, wow. Biggest strategic win I've seen
Was
in
there anyone that
aerospace.
you were like, dang, they nailed it?
I think two examples in particular, I think actually go hand in hand. Um, Watching Airbus's strategy around aerostructures has been really fascinating. And we're watching the verticalization of Airbus Atlantic and effectively reversing what was an incremental trend toward divesting and making more independent your aerostructures providers, which fundamentally many see it as a failed market. I think Kevin Michaels at Aerodynamic Advisory Group uh, sort of hits on the idea of aerostructures as really kind of an ultimate market failure. Uh, but I think Airbus really anticipated that relative to how they're positioning themselves in terms of their own contemporary production ramp ups, but also the longer term around how they look at the next generation single aisle and what they have to do in terms of the iterative design and the integrated design of aerostructures relative to uh, how you do new product development. And Boeing found themselves on the opposite side of that, which was with Spirit Aerosystems having effectively strategically collapsed. Uh, and again, the flywheel that comes with verticalization. I think verticalization is probably going to be the ultimate one of the natural answers to this question about more scarce growth. And so you take that and you apply it to sort of what the environment is at the moment. And I think that, you know, the corollary to that on the, so the new technology side is watching how Joby Aviation has come to sort of build their industrial chain, which is very highly verticalized. I mean, down to, making your own tires or whatnot. And so that just has this compounding flywheel effect that a lot of people at the high end of the more established end of the business are watching in terms of how you take, look that like, 1%, 1%, 1%, 1%, 1%, it compounds on itself. And so, look, I think SpaceX probably is the prime example of that, where you've got like the Raptor 3 engine, which looks just like this very phenomenally refined product after multiple generations of Raptor engines that looked far more, complex and, incrementally deleting requirements and how they actually did that. And I think that's, and I think all of this falls under the same category of being able to control your own destiny and using as few external partners as possible. Because look, I mean, your listeners have a horror story in mind where they have a design change in their system and they need to go to a vendor to do it, and the vendor says, oh, I'm so sorry, I can't get it to you for 6 months because of whatever, whether there's a higher priority something or other in the pipeline, or or just whatever strategic,
That's
or
what keeps
right.
everybody up at night.
Well, exactly, right. The lead times. It's these lead
Hmm.
times. And so how do you begin to engineer that out of your system? And is it expensive? And you ask a CFO like verticalization, they go, oh, they sort of get heartburn and like, that's really expensive. And then you see like, okay, well, take that and then pause for a second and then fast forward 10 years. And what are you able to do and the speed you're able to iterate? And I think the cost of iteration and the cost of the strategic advantage that comes with that is going to be something that I think is really going to be the distinguishing trait between those who are successful and those who are not going forward in this industry. And that's something that I just observed throughout my career, whether it was covering the 787 highly horizontal business model back in the late 2000s and into the early 2010s, and all the troubles around that, and sort of looked at these different arm's length relationships that really created exactly the wrong incentives for, were really great for, again, creating a lot of heartburn around delays and the cost of development, but fundamentally didn't solve the key problem, which is how you make this stuff, this incredibly complex technology affordable.
Right after the event where I met you, Johanna Speed's event in LA, I went to a client site, manufacturing aerospace, and everybody that entire week was terrified, scared. What's it going to mean for us? And it's still a huge pressing concern. I went to this site. I go, how do you feel about tariff situation? How's that rocking you? what tariffs? We do it all here. And my jaw dropped because I just hadn't seen that much verticalization before, particularly when we all went to B school and everything was somebody can do it for cheaper, outsource, outsource, outsource. But we've seen that backlash in a major way.
Yeah, I think that's controlling your own destiny is so important. And look, not to come full circle on the conversation, but a lot of the reasons I launched the Your Current was to control my own destiny. I didn't want to rely on someone else's platform.
Well, how do you recruit reporters that are going to be trusted in such a complex industry?
Yeah, that's so the most important thing I do, I think, as editor in chief of the Air Current is hiring. And so we've got a team of 5 now, and it's an extraordinary team. Will Geisbond, who is our senior reporter based in DC, Brian Garrick Glazer, our managing editor, who is also in Northern Virginia and DC, and Alon, who is in Belize, and Howard Slutskin on my team, who is now in Ottawa doing our operations. And it is we want to really, we don't, there is no ego on our team. And I think that's one of the really important things. When we bring our work product to the team, we accept that it's going to be a challenging. I mean, look, if I bring an edit for something that I've written to the team, I expect them to kick the crap out of it.
It's not going to be perfect.
It's no, not at all. And frankly, I've never had a situation where it wasn't made better by their contributions. And so we trust each other. It's not just we want the rest of the world to trust us. We trust each other to have each other's backs and know that no one's trying to score points. No one's trying to position themselves. That fundamentally, we really feel like our bigger goal is the best possible output because we're growing something together, and that's a really incredibly satisfying process. And we're going to be starting the hiring process again really soon, which I'm really excited about. We've got a few really cool initiatives in the pipeline right now. We've got an iOS app. We're launching a new product called TAC Intel, which we look forward to sharing more with the world soon. But once we have that really kind of nailed down, probably even sooner than that, we're going to start looking for new members of our team because we have had tremendous success because our model does allow us to sustainably grow. And, talk about sustainability in this industry relative to the environment. But I think sustainability from a perspective, whether it's a business, whether it's the Air Current, which is obviously a small business, whether it's a big business, sustainability is the ability to keep to keep going without depleting yourself, and not just sustained
Keep going
growth
without depleting yourself.
Yeah,
It's a good life lesson.
Oh, absolutely. And really kind of in the people who come to the table are not people who, people are not kindling for the blast furnace of your of your organization. They people are what make your product what it is. And so when you come to the table with that, AI looks pretty stupid because the artificialization of what makes you who you are. No one wants a plastic version of the Air Current. People want what we do, and we love that, and we want to deliver that. And so from where we sit, building the team is also done very incrementally. I don't want to grow too quickly. I lost my job.
An advocate for slow growth.
Oh, absolutely. Well, stability, right? It's stability and sustain, because that's what makes it sustainable. Because look, ask any aerospace company what happens when you either grow too quickly or make too many changes too quickly. I mean, the wheels are going to fall off.
Well, let's keep the wheels on.
Yeah.
Okay. You've interviewed a lot of senior execs in industry. What's the most overrated buzzword?
Oh my God. So I feel like I've given myself enough rope to hang myself here, but
let's unpack that.
Yeah.
Let's peel back the onion.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Right. I mean, in a lot of ways, sustainability. It's terrible. I'm literally I'm digging a hole for myself, but I think the idea of sustainability has been thrown around to such a ridiculous extent.
And we all think, oh, that's a great thing.
Absolutely. And I think I think it loses its meaning the more it's said. I also think the word innovation is more or less meaningless now.
All the time.
Yeah.
What does that mean anymore? We've used it too much.
Exactly. And you ask them to define it, and it's like they can't. They absolutely can't.
Okay, before I let you go, the last one related to this. In interviews, all the time, the candidate's not moving forward because he's not strategic enough. What does that mean to you?
It's strategic. It's like okay, so I love strategy. And what I take that to mean is the ability to look at an ecosystem, not just your own, keyhole part of the world. And it's interesting. So when I first started as a journalist, I sort of was piecing together the clues around what was going on with the 787, how that was challenged. And I was talking to folks who had very individual sort of, their views in the world. Like, okay, I work on, putting the wings on the airplane, or I work on, designing this part of the airplane, or I'd work on, avionics, and each has their own little individual view. Um, Being able to align those all together in a cohesive worldview is strategy, right? It's being able to understand the environment that you're in, and all of the pieces affect one another. It's fundamentally systems engineering in many ways. It's how they interact with one another. And strategy fundamentally means a wide field of view for understanding if something is happening over here, it is never isolated to just over there. It is caused by other factors, it is influencing other factors. And so it's the ability to look without us outside of your soda straw, fundamentally.
Outside of your
Both.
company, outside of your niche, connect the
Exactly.
dots.
Exactly. And it's hard to do. It's hard to do because sometimes you don't have time. You're like literally, I mean,
Well, I'll plug
if
it for
you're
you. It helps to
yeah,
read the newspaper.
well, yeah, right. Well, right. And so the that time to slow down and think is strategy, right? Otherwise, you're just fighting fires. And I think that there in many ways in this industry is an obsession with fighting fires as they pop up, and the firefighters end up getting promoted, and so they only know how to fight fires. So,
Why
and
do the firefighters end up getting promoted?
because they grab the executive attention. That fundamentally that's it's what's directly in front of them, and as opposed
We've
to
got a
all.
hero mentality.
Yeah, well, yeah, right, or rescuing it, right? Exactly. And so, I think that can drive an organization to optimizing for the wrong things over time, as opposed to those who are not causing the problems, and why are the problems not being caused in various other parts, as opposed to who solves the problems. Um, Engineering is a phenomenally complex business. Aerospace engineering even more so. I think that how you balance those forces out fundamentally is strategy and positioning it for the long term, and not just thinking about the quarter, and not just thinking about where you're at right now. And it's hard to do when the pressures are aligned. So strategy is how you set the incentives to ultimately think long term.
How you set the incentives to ultimately think long term. I like it. Good definition. Before you go, how do we find out more about the air current?
Yeah. Theaircurrent.com is the best place to find us. You can always email me at Jon, at theaircurrent.com. And
J
please
O
feel
N.
Jon, yes, no H. Please feel free to reach out. And look, we have a lot of really cool stuff coming down the pipeline. And I feel just enormously lucky to lead this team and serve what they do every day to make our audience as smart as they possibly can be, and give them an insight into this industry, which frankly, we just really want to honor the complexity of, and we love so much. So it's enormous amounts of fun. And I think there's way more fun to be had coming up in 2026.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jon.
Thanks, Catherine.